it is so easy to integrate effect into existing code bases. And it's also very easy to integrate effect, well, the other way around, right? Like you can incorporate it into async await code very easily. And then you can also take effect code and use it in async await very easily. It's not like this problem where like it doesn't force effect on the rest of your code base. Like you can isolate it to one function, a couple lines of code in a function, and you can kind of control how you want to start leveraging it over time. And it never really has this forcing function that I think people seem to think it will, where it's like this all-encompassing, like all or nothing framework. We have like one great example. We have a internal RPC client that hits one of our domain services that we use in our back office. And it's all built with effect under the covers. It uses effect RPC, but we have a really thin, maybe 50 lines of code wrapper around that puts an async await interface in front of it so anyone can use it, and it feels like promises, or it is promises. So it doesn't have this like placed over your code base if you think it would. It's very easy to incrementally adopt. And likewise, if you build out like a service or even an endpoint or even just a little client or function and you don't like it, you can constrain it there. It's not like you're stuck with it. But I have never seen someone start using effect and not want to keep using it.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interesting points to remark there maybe. One is that given that JavaScript has been around for such a long time, we have like seen many waves of like different frameworks, different kind of like approaches falling, like becoming mainstream and then falling out of favor again. And I think every time when that happened, like the JavaScript ecosystem at large has formed like the equivalent of an immune system and formed like antibodies of like, okay, oh, like that looks like that thing and we had a bad experience with us. And it's kind of like it rarely like wears off, and it all just like compounds in skepticism and like raises the bar, which is great. But I think also for some ideas that maybe look a little bit like this, but are different, now have a harder time to kind of get through. And so I think it's also worthwhile to dispel a couple of myths about effects, to like notably about like RxJS and so on. We'll come to that in a second. But I just want to highlight again, like how, like I think the perception of like, oh, effect is not easy to incrementally adopt, that I think is also a big myth, because it's one of the easiest technologies to incrementally adopt. Like it's easier to, I still remember when like promises were introduced to JavaScript, and you had to basically go from like just callback hell to promises, and you didn't have promises right away. But you actually like you had to go through like, well, generators. You had to go like through like generators, through Babel, etc. And now when you started introducing that had like also ripple effects for your entire code base. Also still when promises are even top level await is supported everywhere. Now you do like one async function anywhere and you have that function coloring problem. So that's one aspect where I think incremental adoption is like very, very difficult. Or another one would be if you want to interface with another language. So if you want to use Rescript, or if you want to use PureScript or one of those things, then you have like your whole tool chain. You need to like generate some code. You need to do like something that's like actually like FFI. And so with effect, it couldn't be simpler, right? So you have your effect and you run it as a promise, or you have your promise and you run it as an effect. Like simple one-liner, yeah.
Malta, who's the CTO at Vercel, recently had some like apprehensions to us using effect. And like some of the points he brought up is like, well, we need to be sure we're everyone's using our auth and rate limiting and permission checks. And I was like, Malta, like we're using all of this stuff. Like we're using it the same as everybody else. It's just TypeScript. Like we're just wrapping it in like try catch effectively and wrapping it in our own values. It really truly is just TypeScript. We don't have some extra compilation phase. We don't have that FFI layer where you have to write bindings to JavaScript functions. You just call JavaScript functions because it is JavaScript. And like I said, the weirdness of the syntax goes away in literally a day or two, and it becomes so easy to read. It becomes easier to read than your typical TypeScript code bases, just because of the structure it enforces on you. Yeah, I don't know how to teach that or get that light bulb moment to people earlier, but once people get it, it's a beautiful thing.
And I think it like just becomes easier over time. Like we've already formed that nucleus of critical mass where for a small amount of people it has clicked, and that has led to a larger group of people who it has clicked for. And now like larger educators like Matt Pocock, for example, have also they're also you saw a clear trajectory, like it was exposed to effect and like didn't quite get it yet. And I think then you have to really like hit the right problem. Then you realize, okay, I still remember like someone said effect this problem. Okay, let me give it a try. Oh, what is this? And like it's sort of like this meme where like your first reaction like,
I was living for Matt Pocock's journey through effect because like, people, I was tagging him, I was encouraging him to check it out for like the past year and a half, and slowly bit by bit, like he and I had some conversations about Neverthrow. He found value in Neverthrow and he started using that. And it's like, as soon as I knew he found value in Neverthrow, I was like, the minute he tries effect, like for something real, it's game over. And then over the past couple months on Twitter, you saw him diving day by day, tweet by tweet, into the different aspects of effect. And sure enough, it hooked him. And he had the same roller coaster ride as all of us, is where it's like, this looks like overkill, like a lot, and it looks weird. I don't know. I'm fine just using a result type from another library. And then you're like, oh no, this actually does bring some novel things that actually are very easy to use, despite what your gut reaction might be to them.
So given that you have your number of dead bodies under the rug from the past about like introducing Lambda somewhere, RxJS, I'm not sure whether you've like used Redux sagas at some point.
I love Redux sagas.
So maybe we can talk briefly about each of those technologies, since I hear them like every time when like a more notable person brings up effect. There's guaranteed a group of people who say like, oh, this is just RxJS over again. Or like a smaller group of people remember about Lambda. And so like someone has like their past experience, like their trauma from the past, and now like matches it on top of effect. So maybe we can go through the most notable ones here and like maybe talk about like the commonalities and talk about like where they're very, very different.
Yeah, totally down.
So let's start with RxJS, probably the biggest one here. Given you've used it in the past, maybe we can talk about where RxJS and effect is similar. Like spoiler alert, both have a thing for streams. RxJS is exclusively about streams. Effect has, amongst many other things, streams. And where are they different? So I think I've already spoiled the TLDR, but maybe you can go more into depth.
So like RxJS almost has the same problem as like async await. Like it's almost has a function coloring property of its own, where it forces streams and observables on you. And if you want to get all the benefits from, Rx, you have to percolate that everywhere. And there's kind of like a jarring cutoff point where you get outside of Rx. I think the pipe operator we have is like one of the things that people immediately see and just make the assumption that like effect is just streams and observables the whole way down, just like RxJS was, which couldn't be further from the truth. Like pipe is literally just function application in our case, which is something, it's funny. If we would have gotten like a pipe operator in JavaScript, like I don't think this would be a problem at all, but here we are. Effect almost causes like the exact opposite thing, almost like we were talking about earlier. Like you literally don't have function coloring, because you can treat asynchronous programming and synchronous programming as the same thing. But because it integrates so seamlessly with async await, like that cutoff line or integrating it incrementally or getting the full benefit of effect is really easy to do in these isolated chunks, where RxJS, that's not necessarily true. Certainly you can do that, but you're just using for observables and streams, where effect is giving you all these other benefits, whether it's data structures built in or rate limiting or structured concurrency or dependency injection. Like there's a lot more there. I think people just see .pipe and make an assumption there.
So maybe if we want to lean a little bit into the argument where people say like, oh, it's just RxJS all over again. Let's imagine like 4 years ago, they were very excited about RxJS. Maybe they were the person in a team who's like tried this out over the weekend. It made some problems that were notoriously tricky, very elegant with streams. And maybe the thing that they've been working on was like very stream oriented, and like you could actually live that dream that like, hey, everything is a stream. But at some point, reality caught up, and not everything is a stream. Some things got more difficult, and then they had to rip it out. They had a very hard time. And when they now say like, hey, it's like they have that RxJS trauma and they think like effect will be that like all over again, I think their skepticism is coming from the right place, but where effect is very, very different is like if RxJS was only like a tiny sliver of effect and you didn't have all of the other pieces, sure, that means like if you have a different problem, you don't have an elegant solution for that. But effect has kind of like thought that through in all different perspectives and all different directions.